Okay, welcome back to another video. This is my second attempt at making this video. I made it yesterday, but I rewatched it today and I made some errors. But in today's video, I thought I would take a look at the stats or the ship cards for the game. I mean, it's one thing to have the ships in the game, but what do they do? What are they capable of in the game terms? And before we get into a battle report, which I'm going to be doing, hopefully recording tonight, a small one to show everyone how the game plays, I thought I would just go through these cards that I printed out and laminated and then cut, as you can see, terribly here. Probably triggers a lot of people, including myself, how badly cut that is, but I thought we would take a look at this game through the sort of the meta of the game, the what you can do with the game, what the ships can do, what they're capable of. And it's one thing to have the mission book. Here's the mission book here. Sorry for the bed. You get 6 missions in there, like I posted in a previous video, but there's nothing stopping you from doing narrative missions. So although there is a fleet list and a sort of a Flames of War-esque way of assembling, 40k as well, way of assembling your armies, there's nothing stopping you from just throwing some ships down, rolling some dice, and having a good time. So what I've done is I've assembled my ship. I've laid them out here in a pile, and it starts off at the cheapest and to the most expensive on the bottom, and we're going to go through them one at a time and see what we have. Now, I think I have one of each class in this deck, but I'm not positive. So if I miss a ship or a class of ships, I apologize. We'll probably get to them eventually, but that's one of the great things. It's a great problem to have, is this I guess this product that I bought has so much stuff to it. It is literally keeping me awake at nights trying to figure out everything that there is. There's just so much. But let's get to this. Here we have in front of us, we have the British light cruiser HMS Topaz. Here's a Topaz class, so she's the namesake of the class. On this card, you have lots of things. I'm using my pen here so you know what I'm talking about. It's a little easier to figure out where we're going. But in this ship, you have lots of information. But what you have here is you have the Topaz class, what the ship looks like. You have the, oh, that's my cat jumping on the table. You have the you have the year it was launched, 1905. You have the points value in game terms, 25 points, and let me tell you, that's the cheapest chips in this game. You have the discipline value here is a 6+, and that's if you wish to execute any orders or change any orders. You need to roll 2d6 and get more than a 6, and you're able to do it. So discipline's something we'll go on about a little bit more, but the 6+ is more to do with the, you'll see some of the bigger ships have a worse discipline value, but that's just if the captain's up here on the bridge and he's yelling back to the back turret. On a smaller ship, it's easier for them to hear. There's less crew to be involved in each decision, so 6+ is what they need. Right here, I'm sorry if I knocked the camera here, I'm kind of working in close quarters. Right here you have these 2 boxes. One is your hull points, so hull integrity they call it. Essentially that's how many points you have before you're sunk. And as you take damage, you'll put a little dice there. Oh, now I have 4 points left. Now I have 1 point left. Blah, I'm sunk. Or like me, you can do this because they're laminated. You just get a dry erase marker and mark down what you have. Up here, what you have is you have the ships, basically the ship's maneuverability. You'll find the speed, that's in inches, so 6 is 6 inches. Acceleration also works for deceleration, is 2. That's how fast the ship can go. So the ship can go 6 inches, but if you want to slow down, you can only slow down by 2, or speed up by 2. The turn angle is 45 degrees, and that's shown on your ship card here. The 45 degrees is your red line, so it can turn. It's fairly maneuverable. 6 inches in this game is pretty okay. 2 inches acceleration is good, and 45 degrees is good. And that's just basically most light cruisers will have that kind of maneuverability. So you'll see a lot of ships will have very common stats. Down here, you'll see the target size, and that's medium. Target size comes into effect. That's basically how big the ship is. You can understand. And when you're playing the game, if I can get this in focus here, the ship for your ranging, for hitting the ship, medium is you're hitting on an A+ on 2d6. There's other stats there too, but essentially this is how easy the ship is to hit. The evasion is if you do manage to range in, what are the chances that the ship will manage to evade your shot? So if you get hit, if there's 2 shots coming in, you need to roll, 2 5s. That means that both shots came really close, and there's a big cloud of water, lots of water in the air now. They just missed. Protection here, we see -3. -3, I'll just bring this back again, is for your damage table. So your target's protection value, you'll see it goes from 0, 1, 2, 2 being the highest you can get, and -4 being the worst you can get. So depending on the person's firepower that's shooting at you, let's say it's a 4+ firepower, and you have a -3 rating, they're hitting you on 2s. So you can imagine, you're rolling a d6 and you need 2s to do damage. Oh, I dropped my thing. There's a 3. We did 1 damage and that dice is gone. So I'm just going to take a little bit of time, now that you have a general idea of what the speed maneuverability of your ship is, the survivability of your ship is, and now we're going to get down to how much damage your ship will do. Here we see you have spaces for primary, secondary, and tertiary guns. This Topaz class, it only has primary guns. It only has 1 type of gun. In the forward, broadside, and aft, that's the front, back, and sides, obviously. You probably already know that. But in the forward, it's got 2 guns in the front, or essentially, it can roll 2 dice in the front. It can roll 7 dice on the sides, and it can roll 2 dice on the back. And its firepower is a 6+. So just go back here quickly one more time. And you see its firepower, 2+ being the best, 6+ being the worst. So take that into account. You can see that it rolls 7 dice to the sides, but it is a 6. It's probably the weakest gun in the game. It has a range band 8 to 12, and this range band means if the target you're shooting at is within 0 to 8 inches, if you found your mark, you're rolling all the dice will hit, or you've found the target. If you're between 8 or 9 and 12, that means that only half of your dice will hit. So for instance, if you're within, let's say, 11 inches and you're firing with your aft guns at something, that means at 0 to 8 you will roll the 2 dice, and at 9 to 12 you'll only roll 1. And in this game, all dice, if you have, like, say, for instance, 7, well, 7 doesn't go into half very well. You can't do 3.5 dice. In every instance where you have this, you round up, so it'll be 4 dice broadside. And then down here we have the dangerous, the torpedoes. You'll see you have 0-4 torpedoes, 1 broadside torpedo, and 4 yield, 6 range band, 12 max. Wing mounts is a keyword. Essentially, you'll get 1 chance to shoot torpedoes out of the ship. And if you do manage to hit, let's say you get lucky enough to get a hit, you'll roll 4 dice attempting to damage the ship. So torpedoes always hit on a 2+. So if you have 4 dice, you have the chance of rolling 4 dice, your 4 yield, needing 2s. There's 4 damage. You can see if most ships have 5 hull points, that's a 1 severely damaged ship. Now, again, there is critical damage that we'll get into later during the gameplay. You'll see critical damage also means something here. But that's how the torpedoes work. The range band 6, I believe, I might be correct here, I've had some discussions, but the range band 6, you have range band 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 18. This ship uses the range band 6 here, is a maximum range of 12 inches, so you can only use these torpedoes between close and short range, and that will dictate how your ranging modifier for actually hitting the ship. So you're going to be rolling 1 dice with your targets that you're shooting at, all the other modifiers, like what speed they're going, and your ranging modifier. You'll roll 2 dice, you'll hope to match that score, and if you do magically hit, you don't always, but if you do manage to hit, you'll be rolling 4 dice. So a torpedo, it's very powerful in the game, but this Topaz at 25 points does not have very strong torpedoes. Now, I spent 10 minutes talking about one ship, so we're going to speed along here a bit, but I just wanted to describe the card and what the card means, so that when we go through all these, you'll have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Anyway, for 25 points, what do you get? You get a semi-maneuverable ship, pretty bad protection for a light cruiser, well, for any cruiser, but you do get decent broadside dice. They do have the light trait, which helps with hitting. Light meaning that, what I said before, between 0 and 8 they all hit, between 8 and 12 they half hit. So for 25 points, this is the cheapest ship. And if, for instance, you just need to fill in some points or you just don't have enough, the Topaz is there. And it is a light cruiser. You could consider it a destroyer or torpedo boat destroyer. Killer, torpedo boat killer. Next up at 28 points, we have the Glasgow. This is part of the Town, the Bristol class. Its speed value and acceleration is the same as the Topaz, so it's decent. Its maneuverability and evasion is the same. It's basically the mirror. Hull points are the same. It's 1910, 6+ discipline, which is the same. But for your 3 extra points, what you get is, instead of getting on this ship all light guns at firepower 6, you get a couple of guns broadside at firepower 5. Now, firepower 6, because it's the weakest, because it's the go back here, because it's the weakest gun in the game, you're going to be able to kill destroyers. Most destroyers are -4. You're going to be able to kill destroyers. You're going to be able to damage light cruisers pretty bad. Right here, 3 and 4s. But then anything more armored, for instance, pre-dreadnoughts are 1. You're not going to be able to touch them. Heavy battleships are 2. You're going to really struggle to do any damage against any of the armored ships. So that's where the Glasgow, where its 3 points are. You do get a chance with this 5+ firepower of doing some damage. Now the torpedoes are the same, but essentially the Topaz and the Glasgow are fairly similar, except Glasgow is capable of tickling a heavily armored ship, whereas the Topaz is not. Then at 30 points, we get our first destroyer, the HMS Beagle, part of the Beagle class. You'll see it's fairly fast at 7, so it's a little faster than the light cruiser we've just seen. A small target, evasion's better, protection is garbage, hull points are garbage. So for 30 points, what do you get? Well, for 30 points, you get some guns, pretty crap to be honest, and you don't get very many of them, but you do get 2 torpedoes from the broadside with a 5 dice yield. So whereas the Topaz was 4, the Destroyer Beagle is 5, and you get 2 shots, 2 chances. And the discipline is also a little better, and that's just because the ship is a lot smaller. The captain is able to yell through his megaphone and get stuff done. Now at 34 points, we have the Weymouth, which is part of the Town Weymouth class. It's back to the 6 to 45 degree maneuverability. Protection's pretty crap. Evasion's okay, I guess. Hull points is the same as the others. But where this ship shines for 34 points, it's got 4 broadside, 2 and 2 fore and aft at 5+. The 5+ is important. Remember, you're going to be using this. You're going to be using this chart so much you're going to probably know it in the top of your head. But at 5+ down here, you're going to be at least able to damage some of the heavily armored ships. And that's very important when you have a cruiser. You're going to see those big ships come up quite a lot. And then it has a single torpedo, which may not seem so good until you find out that it's got a 7 yield, which is 7 dice. Forget the 5 that we talked about before. You now get 7 dice if you do manage to hit. You get a bigger range, so 3 more inches, and you get the torpedo room keyword, which is important because the other ships that do not have the torpedo keyword in there, they do get 2 shots, but once you expend those 2 shots, you no longer have any torpedoes. Whereas the Weymouth, you can reload, which is important. So this is a really nice cruiser for 34 points. Pretty decent. Spitfire, another destroyer, 39 points. Why are destroyers more expensive than light cruisers? Well, simply torpedoes. That's basically why. The evasion and torpedoes. You can see the Spitfire is rapid, 8 inches, 245. Crap hull points, decent evasion, crap protection, good discipline. You know, it's got some guns, but they're not really going to do much against anything other than extremely light cruisers and some other torpedo boats. But it has two torpedoes at 7 yield each at 15 range, which is excellent. So the Acasta type destroyer, you're probably going to be utilizing quite a bit. I think it's probably going to be your go-to destroyer. The Beagle is okay, but the Beagle's torpedoes aren't quite as good. Now you have the Cleopatra. You're starting to get into the Caroline class cruisers, and these are starting to get into the more modern cruisers as far as Dreadnought era goes. So 1915, Discipline 6 plus 47 points. It's starting to get more expensive, and for those points, you get a fairly fast ship, same as the other light cruisers, but the protection is getting better. Now you're at -2, which is in this game -2 would basically be destroyers are going to damage you on a 4+ instead of a 2+ or a 3+. So it's relatively heavily armored as light cruisers go. It's got 4 broadside guns at a 5+. So it's at least capable of taking on other cruisers. But then it also has 2 torpedoes with 7 yield at 15 inches, and the wing mounts, which is essentially you get torpedoes on this side and torpedoes on that side. Whereas destroyers can sometimes swivel their torpedoes all the way around. Once they've expended them, they're gone. You can expand on these cruisers. You can expand your port side and your starboard side, or one or the other. So even if you fire the torpedoes out of the starboard side, you still have some in the port side. But anyway, back on point here. You're paying 47 points for these torpedoes and the chance of slightly damaging a other cruiser and a little bit more armor. You can see the hull points are only 5 there, so it's not any more survivable than most things. Galatea, which is part of the Arthusia class. Why didn't I choose the Arthusia? Simply because I liked the name Galatea better, and I felt like saying it more than Arthusia. 1914, 48 points. It's 1 point more than the Cleopatra there, the Caroline class. The speed is a little bit better, so 8 inches versus 7. Protection is the same, hull points are the same. It has less guns, whereas the Caroline has 4. You only have 2. But you do have a secondary battery, which the Caroline which the Cleopatra does not have, or the Caroline, I guess. You do have a secondary battery of 3 dice with a shorter range for tickling some destroyers. But what you really do get for your extra point is you get 4 broadside torpedoes versus the 2 here on the Caroline. You get 4 broadside torpedoes at yield 7, which is pretty deadly. 4 chances of launching a torpedo at a dreadnought or a capital ship of some kind, and you're probably going to eat it. Now we have the destroyer, the Admiralty class. I have the HMS Marne here. 53 points, standard destroyer discipline. It's a relatively modern destroyer. It's rapid, 9 inches, great acceleration. So it's really fast, really maneuverable. It's small, has the same destroyer stats, 4+ evasion, -4 protection, barely any hull points. It has, comparatively for a destroyer, broadside's fairly decent, not very good guns, but 4 torpedoes again at yield 7 at 15 range. That's amazing for 53 points. The first major capital ship you'll see in the game at 53 points, the same as the destroyer, is the Monmouth. Now, why would you choose a Monmouth over a destroyer with lots of torpedoes? It's tough. It's an old ship, 1903. Discipline is okay, but its maneuverability, it's fast when it goes forward. It's 6 inches is not bad, but it takes let's say you're in dry dock or you're in dock and you're at 0 speed. It's 6 turns before you get up to full speed. It's a slow ship. And its turning angle is 30, which is pretty, not awful, but it's bad. Its protection is okay at -2. Its evasion is okay as well, but it does have an extra hull point over the other light cruisers. It does have 2 primary guns. It does have 2 primary batteries, a primary and a secondary, rather. And this is where your 53 points, this is where you're paying for everything. This is the ship is worthless except for these. Primary battery, 5 forward, 9 broadside, 4 aft, a very useful 5+ firepower, and the light keyword. And you do have then 5 dice, 2 and 2 for the secondary with the light keyword 2, which is very useful. Torpedo is only 1, and it's a yield of 4, although you do get to reload it. But the torpedo is pretty garbage. Now, why would you choose a destroyer with its 3 dice over the Monmouth? Well, it's because the Monmouth is slow. And by the time the Monmouth, I find, gets engaged with its light guns, by the time it gets engaged in anything but a small enclosed battle, it's outranged by almost everything. So for it to be of any value, it needs to get these guns on target, which means you have to spend your entire movement closing with the enemy, under fire the whole time, mind you. And you're not the most survivable ship. You have to close. You're only going to be using 5 dice for the majority as you're closing in. And before you get to use your broadside, remember, you're going to be up against some big ships and some destroyers and some light cruisers, and they're going to eat you alive. The Monmouth, I don't think, is worth it if you got to choose a destroyer like him. He can sink a capital ship, whereas the Monmouth probably cannot. But where the Monmouth does come in is that if you manage to get it into combat, it's going to eat some light cruisers and some destroyers. One of the main reasons I think you would probably have this ship in your fleet is as what they would call that. I was going to say pin cushion, but that's the wrong word. Basically, a bullet sponge, a shell sponge. So here it is here. Just because it looks big and imposing, it's probably going to attract some attention. So if it can take, let's say, a Bayern, or a Bayern, or a Koenig, or a Kaiser, or even a Helgoland, if they choose to shoot at this ship for a turn or two to sink it, it might give your other ships, more powerful ships, a chance to actually do some work. Now, move on to the Marksman, which is a destroyer leader. Now, these are very large destroyers, very expensive as far as destroyers go. It's rocket fast, great maneuverability, same destroyer type of protection. Hull points are kind of garbage. It does have some useful guns, 4, but they're kind of light, so 6 pluses. But it does have 4 torpedoes. So anytime a Marksman or a Scott class or even the other destroyers getting close range, you're going to see the opposing players start to panic a little bit, because I do not like the odds of surviving 4 shots of a torpedo. And remember, if all 4 hit, that's 28 dice you're rolling for damage on a 2 plus. Please, you're going to delete any ship in the game. The Caledon, which is a light cruiser. This is basically the cream of the crop of the First World War British cruisers, or light cruisers. 1917, 66 points, hella expensive, 6 plus discipline, but you're getting great speed, decent acceleration, decent turn angle, decent survivability, the normal hit points or hull points. You're getting a decent amount of guns, 5 on 5 power with the light keyword, but then you're also getting 4 torpedoes, 7 yield, range 15, and wing mounts. So you get to shoot out of both sides of the ship at the same turn or in different turns, whatever you want. But for 66 points, it's pretty expensive. But the Caledon, if you do have a cruiser, it's going to be your main cruiser in the group. Then at a very close 68 points, we have the Series class, and they're very similar. Same speed, same survivability, same hull points, same discipline. You get 1 extra gun on the forward, it looks like. If I can just get closer here, hopefully you can see that. But for your extra 2 points from 66 to 68, you're getting a broadside of 5 and 5, aft 2 and 2, but 1 extra forward gun. So the Series light cruiser is better at closing with the enemy. It's able to put down more firepower, and because it has the 5 plus battery firepower rating, it's able to scratch the paint of some of the bigger ships. HMS Scott, 70 points, very expensive ship, but it's wicked fast, can turn great, acceleration is good, survivability is normal for a destroyer. Remember, a destroyer is going to survive based off of its size and its evasion. If it does get hit, things have gone wrong. So 2 hull points is normal for a destroyer, but it does have some decent guns at decent range bands, but it has an amazing 6 broadside torpedoes at 7 yield at 15 inches range. This thing, I mean, if I know my opponent is taking a Scott into battle, I think my capital ship might have to shoot at it, because I just don't understand. I just cannot think of these torpedoes getting in close. You know, it's not rare, but it is fairly difficult to get torpedoes to hit. But when you have 6 chances, wow, one of them is going to go through. Like, even no matter what your odds are, one of them is bound to go through. And at 7 yield, it's going to eat something. Now, another capital ship, the armored cruiser, the Black Prince. It's a Duke of Edinburgh class. I just like the Black Prince more, the name. It's got the same problems as the Monmouth. It's slow, but its survivability at -1, that's the best we've seen so far. It's pretty survivable. And you have to understand, like, at a -1, here's the -1 rating here, most of the destroyers and light cruisers have -6, -5. I mean, you're not guaranteed to do any damage to it with a 4 and a 5 plus. But you do get a primary battery and a secondary battery. The primary battery uses the range band 12, 4 dice broadside on range band 12. Let's bring this back. Take a look. Here's range band 12. So you can go out to 60 inches, it seems like. You know, pretty hard to hit, but you can go out to 60 inches with this gun. So this is the first ship we've seen with the ability to actually reach across the table and do some damage. And it's got a torpedo, a pretty crappy one at that, but it's an old ship, so that's understandable. So the Black Prince, 72 points. You're paying for essentially these guns to reach across the table and start the engagement. Now we have gone to the HMS Warrior, which is part of the Warrior class. Same points value as the Duke of Edinburgh. Similar stats, hull points, protection, disciplines, all the same. But what you get, what's the difference here? Your torpedoes are the same, and your guns, I see what the difference is. Your guns are the same, essentially. Firepower 4, which is pretty good for both, but now you have essentially 2 primary batteries. You have the main guns here, and then the secondary guns have the same firepower rating on a different range band. So, bring the range band back in. You have 60 inches range and 50 inches range, up to, I guess, for your secondary batteries. So this ship is foregoing the let's kill a destroyer. This is let's kill a light cruiser, let's kill an armored cruiser. The HMS Defense, another armored cruiser. Now we're into 100 points. You're starting to eat up whatever points you have available. Suffers from the same maneuverability, same survivability, same hull points as the previous armored cruisers, but this time you have 3 guns, 3 batteries. You have a primary and a secondary, very similar to the Warrior, but you get way more dice, 4 and 2 versus 4 and 5. The secondary battery on the ship is pretty nasty. And then you get a tertiary battery. So this is very good at eating light cruisers and armored cruisers and some battle cruisers, but it's also equally as good or capable of eating a destroyer. And it does have 2 torpedoes, but they're 4 yield, so it's not a torpedo boat, but they are there, and you can reload them. First pre-dreadnought, first big ship in the game, the Lord Nelson. I chose Agamemnon just because I like the name. It's a bigger ship, so its discipline is worse. That doesn't mean that the crew isn't as trained. It just means that there's a lot more crew to organize to get stuff done. The speed, that's shit, as you would expect from an old ship. Acceleration is garbage. Turning angle is garbage. This is a bad ship. This is not going to win any races. But it has protection 1, and evasion 6 is kind of shit. But protection 1, if we look back here on our stats, protection 1, destroyers can't touch you. Light cruisers might scratch your paint. Armored cruisers still is pretty difficult, but it can be done. And only the big ships can really damage you. So the 2 here at the bottom with the light ships, you're basically impervious to a lot of damage. And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the protection 1 and the 8 hull points. Now, you do get 3 types of batteries: primary, secondary, tertiary. Primary battery, a 3+ firepower. That's pretty good. I just want to show again, firepower, 3+ firepower right here. A destroyer, you're killing on a 2+ if you hit him. You know, a light cruiser, you're killing on a 2+ or damaging on a 2+ if you hit him. Same with the newer light cruisers and armored cruisers on 2+. So 3+ firepower with 4 dice. It's pretty substantial. And then, to complement that, you also have basically the same as an armored cruiser secondary battery at 4+. And you can go out with range band 12, you can go out to 60 inches with both of these. So 60 inches. This ship is a threat. It may not be going anywhere or escaping anything, but it's a threat on the battlefield, or I guess on the ocean. Now, your torpedoes, you do have 2. They are reloaded, or they can be reloaded, but the yield is kind of meh. Old torpedoes. HMS Colossus, the first of the Dreadnought, the proper Dreadnought types. It's better speed than the pre-Dreadnought. Acceleration is the same, turning angle is the same kind of crap. It's large target. It does have the protection 1, which is important. It's 148 points though, but this is it. This is what you're paying for. Whereas the Agamemnon, you have 4 dice on a 3+ firepower. Now you're up to 10. 4 forward and 6 aft. So I mean, even running away, this ship is a threat. And then you have 8 dice with the light keyword on a 6+. So this is a capital ship killer and a destroyer light cruiser killer. The torpedoes, it's only got 1 front and aft, but they are yield 7 and they are reloadable, so it's useful. But I mean, the main thing you're paying for here is the guns. So that's the Colossus. Now we go to the Agincourt. Now remember, I'm going by points value. So the Colossus is a 148, the Agincourt is 193. The Agincourt here has a speed of 5, standard, essentially crap maneuverability, although it's not that slow. Protection 1, but a massive 12 hull points. That's insane. This ship's not going down it's going to be in the game for 2 to 3 to 4 turns, unless it gets torpedoed by a couple of ships. It's going to stay in the game, stay in the fight. And look at the broadside. 14 3+ hits at range band 12, which is 60 inches. Or, sorry, can be up to 60 inches. You're not guaranteed to hit anything. But chucking 14 dice at 60 inches, even if you need a 12 on two dice, I mean, it's possible, you know? Let's say you do get 2 6s on the range table. You do manage to find the range at 60 inches. I mean, you're chucking 14 dice. The opponent has to evade, and if they're a capital ship, they're 6+. They have to evade 14 dice on a 6+. That's bad. They're taking at least 10 hits, and you know, we just looked at the Colossus with 8 hits. 10 hits on average. That's going to delete a ship if it hits it. Secondary battery is 8 dice, 5+ firepower, so it's good at taking out light cruisers and destroyers. And it has torpedo room, only 1 though on broadside and aft, yield 7, which is excellent. It's there. The Canada, 204 points. Starting to get mighty expensive. Let's say you're playing a 500-point game. This is almost half your points. Standard maneuverability, pretty slow. Target size, protection though is 0. 12 hull points. I just want to show you what 0 means. 0 means, you know, the big ships, the warspites, the Bayerns are hitting you, damaging you on 2+, but destroyers and light cruisers, they're going to have a hard time, but they still can do it. But it's a little less armored than the other ships we've seen with the ones. But I mean, it has 10 2+ firepower, which is what you're paying for. 10 dice with the 2+ firepower and 2 broadside torpedoes with 7 yield that are reloadable. That is excellent. 2+ firepower. Keep going back to this, but it's going to help you understand. 2+ firepower. Look what you're doing. You're damaging most things on the 2. Only the heaviest armored ships are 4. So Canada is pretty good, but it's also pretty expensive. The Orion comes in 2 different configurations. It comes in the 1909 and the 1917. There's a point difference between them, and all of their stats are practically identical, except for the 1917 version of the ship, for 1 point less, has 2 less broadside guns as a secondary battery. So we'll just take that one away for now and just focus on this one. Standard crappy maneuverability. Survivability is decent. 8 hull points it's kind of light, but it's okay. 10 broadside dice at a 2+ is what you're paying for. The 7 secondary dice at a 6+ will kill a destroyer. And you have a torpedo, which is very useful. 206 points. The King George has the same. It comes in 2 configurations, the 1917 and the 1912. There's 2 points difference, and the difference is essentially the secondary battery again. 5 dice versus 7 dice, so we'll just take this one away, just in case you need to save a couple of points. The King George, 214 points, very similar maneuverability, very similar survivability. 10 hull points, so it's a little, it can take a couple of hits. You're paying for the 10 2+ guns, and the 7 6+ guns, and the torpedo. I'm trying to speed this along because we're getting up in time here. The Iron Duke, we're getting into the serious ships now. The stats are the same as the other ships. Survivability and speed are basically what you would expect. 10 hull points. You're paying for the 10 2+ firepower and the 6 5+ firepower, but you get 2 7-yield torpedoes that can be reloaded. So it's a very useful ship. But would I take an Iron Duke over a 220 points over a 214 King George? You're getting an extra torpedo out of that, and you're getting an extra torpedo, but the King George has an extra secondary on each side. I don't know. If I have to use the Iron Duke as a torpedo ship, something's gone wrong. So probably the King George would take the edge there if I had to have one. Now the Erin, and that's a 222-point ship. It has similar maneuverability, similar survivability, similar hull points, similar discipline. You're getting the 10 2+ broadside, and the 6 6+ destroyer killers, and 2 torpedoes that can be reloaded. Not a whole lot different here between the other ships, but it's an option. The Revenge, we're getting into the big guns. The Revenge, oh boy, similar maneuverability, survivability is a little better at 12. Protection is 2 though. So go back to the chart again one more time. Protection 2. Destroyers and light cruisers, you're just gonna laugh at them. Armored cruisers, you're gonna have a hell of a time stripping down 12 hull points with an armored cruiser. And then the main ships 4 and 5. So even the most powerful ship, it has a chance of surviving. So you're paying all these points, I would assume, for the survivability of 2 and the 8 2+ guns at 18-inch range. Now, not 18-inch range, 18-inch, the 18 range band, which is, I can show you, I hate to do this again, show you the page, 18 up to 90 inches. So these are really, really long distance guns, and if you do manage to hit them, you're rolling 8 dice on the 2 firepower table, which is pretty destructive. Now you do have good torpedoes, but you're paying for the protection and this range. And then everyone's favorite, including mine, the Warspite. It's a Queen Elizabeth class. It's a lot more points, 281. This Revenge was 247. And what do you get for those? Very similar stats. Very similar stats. Very similar stats. Let's take a close look here. I thought I seen a difference here, but we'll find them. The hull points are the same. The maneuverability is the same. Survivability is the same. The guns look exactly the same. Torpedo room looks the same. What am I missing here? Oh, that's what it is. The speed, of course. Fast battleship. The speed is more. You get 1 extra inch. Now, would you rather have a Queen Elizabeth class? I know everyone loves a Warspite, or a Revenge class and a light cruiser, or a torpedo boat, or a destroyer. I personally would rather have a Revenge and a torpedo boat or a destroyer, just because I get the extra activation. Now, it's great to have the Warspite go so fast, but with 90-inch guns, or 90-inch range guns, I don't really need to outrun. I'm not trying to keep up with BD's battle cruisers here. I'm looking to put shells downrange, which is what I would do. So the Warspite probably won't get much action on the table in competitive games, but for fluff it will. Just quickly, getting on to 40 minutes here, we're going to go on to the battle cruisers. I did these separately just because the battle cruisers are their own part of the fleet book, and it'd be interesting to get to compare battle cruisers to battle cruisers. So the first one you have is the Invincible, the first battle cruiser created. 1909 version and the 1916 version. The 1909 is 99 points. The 1916 is 92 points. Why would you want a 99 version over 92? Well, the hull points, the speed is decent. 6-inch is going to keep up with light cruisers. Well, a lot of light cruisers. So it's fairly fast, but nothing spectacular. It's slow to accelerate. It's got a terrible turning angle. It's got okay protection. It's kind of weak hull points, but it's not terrible yet. But you get 6 3+ firepower, 12 range band. That's 60 inches. up to 60 inches. And then you get the secondary battery of 10 6+. So you're going to be able to eat a destroyer, but you are exposed. Now the mod for 1916, you lose a lot of points. And what the main difference is, instead of having 10 broadside secondaries, you only have 6. So you sacrifice 4 secondaries, but you're no longer exposed, which is important in the game. You're no longer exposed. You get 7 extra points to play with, and you still keep basically the rest of the stats. So for 92 points, the modified 1916 version of Admiral Hood's battlecruiser HMS Invincible is actually pretty nice. Then you get the Indefatigable, a later on battlecruiser, 1911, 113 points. Same stats as the Indefatigable, same stats as the Invincible when it comes to speed. Protection is the same. The hull points are the same, but instead of 6 main guns, you get 8. And that's basically your difference. 8 main guns versus 6. And, at 113 points, it's up to you. The Lion. The Princess Royal and the Queen Mary are very similar to the Lion, so I chose the Lion just to show off the stats. I think the stats are identical for the other 2 ships. But what you get is an extremely fast capital ship. Extremely fast. Turning radius and acceleration is pretty poor. You get 2 extra hull points over the Indefatigable and the Invincible class. Your protection goes up to 0 from -1. Now at a 0, a destroyer and a light cruiser, like the early light cruisers, they're only going to damage you on a 6+. So you are susceptible to being peppered to death. But still it's better than nothing. You get 8 broadside, 2+ firepower. The guns on the ship are amazing. They're great. They're like the Warspite type of guns. The range isn't as good, and whereas the Warspite can shoot up to 90 inches, you're only going to shoot up to 75 inches. What I mean, like, you're playing a game here. You're probably going to be fine with these guns, and the 2+ firepower is amazing. Your secondaries are okay, 6 broadside at 6+, and your torpedo, you get 1. You get 1 reloadable at 7 yield. It's a decent ship, but it's fairly expensive, although compared to some of the battleships. Then you get Renown, which is the one of the latest battle cruisers in the fleet, and it's not the most expensive. And it's not the most expensive for a simple reason, as it doesn't have that many primary guns. It only has 1 aft turret versus 2 forward turrets, 1 aft, and it can shoot the 3 to the side. Speed is fantastic, 8. It's one of the fastest ships apart from a destroyer leader out there. Radius of turn and acceleration is poor. Protection's not the greatest. It does have 12 hull points, so it's survivable. It'll last a couple of turns if it takes heavy firepower. But the guns, you do get the 2+, and you do get up to 90 inches range with the 18 range band, but you're suffering with the only 6 shots. But they are 2+, so they are good. And its secondary is really good. 10 dice at 12 inches on a 6+. Any destroyer getting foolish enough to get close to a Renown is going to pay for it. And then you get the torpedo, which is a 7-yield torpedo. Was not bad, but it's 181 points. Now, take the Lion, 171 points. You're saving 10 points there, and you're getting 2 extra dice on the same firepower table, just a little less range. I would be inclined to take the Lion over the Renown simply because of that. And then lastly, we have the Tiger. This is the 1914 version of the Tiger. It's the same as the Lion, very fast. It's got 1 protection, which for a battlecruiser, 1 protection is extremely heavily armored for a battlecruiser. Destroyers and the early light cruisers aren't going to touch you. They cannot damage you. Only a 5+ firepower rating can even scratch you. 10 hull points, a little less, but it's okay. You got the same great guns the Lion does, and similar secondaries, and 2 torpedoes. So what are you paying for over the Lion? What are you paying for all those extra points? You're paying for protection, it looks like. Protection 0 versus protection 1. You've got 1 less forward and 1 less aft gun for secondaries. You're paying for an extra torpedo. So for an extra torpedo and protection 1, it's quite a lot of points. I'd still favor the Lion over it, just simply because I can then take the Lion and a cruiser over the Tiger. And that's it. That is the list of ships for the British. And I'm going to be back later on with the list of the German ships, which I have with me here. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope it was informational for you, and we'll talk to you again. Thanks. Bye.